Well, it started when I was still in high school. I was very much interested in doing something sciencey about water. So in high school, one of my requirements for us to graduate is to come up with a science investigatory project and research on any particular aspect that you want to do. So, but for my case, what I did was it was the use of the seeds of malunggay um, as um, as a filter, as a material that could actually clean polluted water, particularly rivers in my province. So my province was Abra. I lived there and for for quite some time, and then parang na-realize ko na magandang gumawa ng study since marami kasi kaming ilog in the province. So yung study ko na yon, I presented it. One of the panel members of when I was presenting that study was actually the provincial director of the Department of Science and Technology in our province back then. So it was an honor, but it was also like there was a certain degree of pressure because you're presenting obviously to the provincial director of DOST. So I mean, I was really young back then, but it was a good study because there are a lot of literature that would say that malunggay seeds are effective in treating polluted waters, particularly if in terms of certain water quality parameters. But I haven't tested other, say, presence of heavy metals or like presence of microorganisms. So hindi ganun ka comprehensive yung study na yun. And then in college, it's ironic because nag-college ako sa UP here in UP Baguio, uh, I hated doing river work. Like there's a subject in our program which is BS biology. May isang program doon na I always hated doing anything about rivers kasi I've always I have this misconception about rivers being dirty and like, not appealing, unlike marine ecosystems like oceans and seas na parang mas marami kang makikitang organisms, mas aesthetically pleasing siya sa mata, mas maganda siyang tignan sa mata.
I think everyone
Um,
has that general like assumptions about rivers na these
yeah,
days.
yeah,
No?
yeah, yeah. And like it's very difficult na tanggalin yung misconception na yun because when I was also young, like when I was in high school, I used to watch like this channel on TV. I'm not quite sure if it's Nat Geo or Discovery Channel. There's like this TV series called River Monsters. So
Oh yeah,
I'm
I'm familiar with that. Yeah, when
yeah.
they're
So
trying to
I'm
catch
very
these big fishes.
exactly. So I'm very scared of any big creature in rivers in particular. So like I wasn't really interested in doing river work. But then in our fourth year, in my fourth year of undergraduate studies here in UP, I was enrolled in a course called limnology, and it's all about the study of inland waters. So when you say inland waters, this would include both lakes or rivers, and other types of freshwater ecosystems that are actually located near a body of land. So that was the course. And I actually fell in love with that course, all of the readings, all of the theory that I've learned from that course, but more in terms of our field work. So part of our program is, exposure and practical training on doing environmental and ecosystem work in various habitats and environments. So part of which would be our visits in rivers. So doon ko siguro na simulan kasi parang meron kaming binisitang river in here in the Cordillera region na ilog. Is pinuntahan namin yung falls kung saan nanggagaling din yung tubig niya, and it was really nice. It was a really memorable experience for me. But ironically, what I pursued for my undergraduate thesis was kind of different with what I'm really passionate about. So I did like earthworm. So completely different na na research work. Pero nandun pa rin naman yung love ko for water and particularly rivers. Dun siya nagsimula. So I taught for like 5 years here in UP Baga after I finished my BS Bio degree. But then I was really, really interested in doing river ecology, water quality, anything about rivers, anything about, freshwater ecosystems. I was really interested in doing that. So in 2021, I was quite fortunate to be awarded a Chevening Scholarship to study for my master's in the United Kingdom. And then it was spring term, usually kasi 1 year lang yung master's sa UK. So yung spring term, kumbaga second semester in the UK, yun yung thesis stage namin. So in the UK, they call it a dissertation. Pag dito naman sa Pilipinas, ang dissertation sa atin, di ba yung PhD? Pero sa kanila sa master's, dissertation ang tawag. So yung mga supervisors namin, mga professors namin, they were actually like offering research projects already or topics that we would want to like work on for our dissertation. Pero ako bilang Pilipino at bilang Dibo, I don't know, for some reason I thought why not create my own research project and research topic from scratch kasi um parang feeling ko mas mag-gravitate ako and mas interested ako in actually doing and finishing it because mas ginawa ko siya, mas napag-isipan ko siya. So I asked my supervisor back then, our academic director, like, may I pitch my own research project, my own research topic? So, sabi naman niya, yes, you can do that, definitely. And she was really excited about it because her work as well as a scientist in the UK is on rivers, particularly the River Thames and River Loddon in the UK. So yun yung mga isa sa mga pinakamalalaking river systems nila in London, so in England. So it was really parang nag-jive yung interest naming parehas as my supervisor. So gumawa ako ng research proposal and we're required to present it. And sabi ko, why not do something about our Philippine river systems and our watersheds? So ako, sabi ko, since I'm from the Cordillera Administrative Region and I'm from this province called Abra, and there's a major river basin in that province, we call it Abra River. Might as well do it. And I'm from Abra, so parang it's a full circle moment for me to be able to actually do something relevant to my province, relevant to our country. And again, I'm going there as a Filipino scholar, so might as well do something for our country rather than do something directly na UK yung magbe-benefit. I mean,
Exactly.
don't get me wrong, like I feel like I'm entirely grateful for the fact that it was the British government who funded my scholarship, but it's also like a way of paying it forward to all of the Filipinos here in our country na I'll do something relevant for our country and for our ecosystems. So I pitched the project and they approved it. Kasi sabi nila, oh, that's feasible, you can do that. So essentially, the objective of the research project is I'm gathering because I cannot go home to do like on-ground studies. I cannot do it there because I cannot fly back home and do field work because I only have like 6-7 months to actually do the entire research project. So my plan was to use satellite images captured by satellites roaming our planet, and then use those satellite images to create a formula to quantify the quality or the health of an ecosystem, particularly of the Abra River Basin and its associated watershed. Kasi ang understanding natin pag sinabi nating river, palaging yung tubig na dinadaluyan yung tributary or yung channel, yung tinitignan lang natin. Pero pag sinabi nating river, there's gonna be an associated watershed. So the forest ecosystems, the land associated, part yun ng watershed. saan tumatagos yung mga channels and tributaries ng isang ilog, parte yon ng watershed ng isang malaking river basin or river system kagaya ng Aber River. So, ang meron kasing mga ginagamit na there's this particular field, we call it remote sensing. It's a method that we use in geography, in mapping. So if you're interested in doing mapping, parang yung satellite images, yung pictures na nakukuha ng satellites, may data kasi yung mga images na yan. Pwede kang mag-extract ng data from those and actually analyze, say, vegetation cover. So kunyari mga yung mga data or yung mga pictures ng mga forest cover na pinapublish online, yung mga results na yan. Apart from doing yung nagbibilang sila one by one manually on field,
Right.
ang ginagawa ng ibang mga environmental practitioners, environmental managers is that they use satellite images. Tapos, ina-analyze nila yon, they use certain equations to look at vegetation cover. Yung iba naman, kunyari, paano na sinasabi na nag-heat up yung mga oceans natin. Di ba sinasabi nila that our oceans are warming up.
Yes.
So apart from actually measuring it in the ocean in itself, they actually use satellite imagery. So they capture images, they analyze those images, and then they get the data from it, and then nako-compute nila yung mga mean surface sea temperatures and mga average temperature ng karagatan natin. Kaya sila nakaka-come up with data and information about, say, rising sea temperatures that could lead to ocean acidification, etc. So ganun din yung ginawa ko, pero I used multiple variables. I used multiple components. Finuse ko siya together, and then I came up with one single equation that could assess the ecological quality of an environment, particularly of the watershed. So minsan, go ahead.
Yes, and how are you able to get access from these satellites and technology?
Oh yeah, that's a good question. The database is free. So sa US we call it the USGS. It's an acronym. I forgot the entire name, but it's a mouthful. But it's an organization na sila yung in charge sa pagmamanage ng mga satellite images na kinukuha ng satellite. So if you've heard of the terms Landsat, yan, US-based satellites yung mga yan na kumukuha ng images ng ating planeta periodically. So may certain yan na time period na kumukuha sila ng portion ng Earth. So habang umiikot yung planeta natin, kumukuha din ng satellite images yung mga. And then they get uploaded to a database which is free. It gets to a point where it's gonna be for a certain price if you're going to use the satellite images commercially. So pag
Right.
kunyari, nagbebenta ka ng lupa, yan, minsan pag ginagamit mo siya for business, dun siya magbayad. But if you're like an academic, a student, a researcher, everything is for free.
And this satellite can actually capture the temperatures and the water mass?
Not necessarily
right?
The temperature in itself, but we
Yes.
call it, may mga, tinatawag namin siya sa technical term, parang may spectral signature. It has something to do with how light is reflected back. So, ganun siya. Yung basic physics of it is like, of the light and reflection and the physics of light in itself. So, yun yung,
right.
kumbaga yun yung naka-embed dun sa data, sa satellite images na na-download natin. So what we can do is we can extrapolate all of the quantitative data to come up with, like, say, an approximation of the temperature or say vegetation, etc. So ganun siya nag-work. We have counterparts actually in the Philippines.
Right.
Say the National Mapping parang authority, parang yung NAMRIA is also capable, and even DOST, ASTI, Advanced Science Technology Institute, meron din silang database and of satellite images. Pwede ka mag-request sa kanila ng satellite images for these kinds of projects. So,
Right.
ganun siyang aspect. After gathering all of the satellite imagery, parang I use a software. It's also a free software. So parang kung interested kayo in doing mapping work, a lot of Filipino scientists, academics, practitioners in mapping, they use what we call QGIS. It's an online open platform for doing mapping. So dun ko lahat ginawa ng analysis ko, mapping ko, to actually quantify the ecological health and quality of an environment. So there's a bit of math, pero hindi naman ako essentially yung nag-compute. Parang there are multiple functions in that software that could actually do it for me. Pero because I have to do the downloading manually, I have to check whether the data set is okay. I have to check whether certain conditions are okay. Kasi ang kalaban mo pag naggumagamit ka ng satellite images ay clouds. So
Right.
pag merong cloud cover, kunyari ito yung ecosystem na gusto mong aralin, pag may ulap dyan, hindi mo fully makakapture accurately yung data ng ecosystem na gusto mong aralin kasi may
Yes.
clouds ka. So
Makes sense.
may mga ganun kaming consideration. So to be honest, meron din namang certain parang limitations yung paggamit ng um ng satellite images, kaya parang it's recommended and suggested that you couple it with groundwork. So kung magsa-satellite images ka, pupuntahan mo din yung ecosystem mo at aaralin mo and verify mo tama ba na ganito at this point yung information na pinapakita ng mapa ko, parang gano'n. I'll try to share something
Yes.
sa screen if that's okay, so that
Yes.
I could
Yes.
show you. I was able to at least
Of course.
yeah, I don't know if you see it. But this was the title of the study. Establishing the ecological quality of the Abra River Basin and its watershed in northern Luzon, Philippines, using the Remote Sensing Ecological Index. So just to skip, but the objective was this. So to construct that index or that quantitative measure and then evaluate the quality of the ecosystem. So this is Abra River, the entire watershed. So feeling ko naman familiar tayo sa mapa ng Pilipinas. That's portion of Luzon, and the one on yellow dun sa top left is the province of Abra. So pag zoom mo yan yung makikita mo, and then makikita niyo yung parang nagda-diverge na black lines na parang ugat. It
Yes.
looks very dendritic. Yan yung tributaries and channels ng Abra River. So dyan
But does
dumadaloy
it
yung
mean
tubig.
sa surface mismo or some are going underground?
Sa surface lang.
Surface lang,
Yeah.
okay.
So karamihan yan ay surface. And the thing with Abra River is that it starts at the very top pero it will drain in a province, Ilocos Sur. So portion na siya ng Ilocos Sur nagdi-drain. But anyway, so that's the entirety of it. And then this was the entire process in one schematic flowchart. So to download everything and then retrieve what we call ecological indices. These are sort of like scorecards. Parang quantitative measure siya ng isang particular na parameter. So kunyari, greenness, yung nakakita mo na green dito is retrieval of NDVI, or yan yung tinatawag namin na measure of vegetation. So pag gusto mong mag-measure ng vegetation, ginagamit mo yung NDVI for satellite images para ma-compute mo yung cover ng vegetation. Pero dahil ang goal ko nga ay ecological quality, hindi naman pwedeng ang parameter lang ay vegetation. Kasi 'di ba, pag nasa isang environment ka, it's not just about vegetation, it's also about temperature.
Yes.
So, meron din dito sa ilalim yung LST or heat, that is the land surface temperature. So, yan naman yung parameter ko for temperature. And then yung LSM or land surface moisture, yan naman yung wetness, that it will account for the moisture present in the area or yung tubig na meron sa area. And then NDBSI or dryness. And in addition, yung NDBSI is a measure of how bare the soil is. Kasi I believe you're an architect, right? So
Yes,
sa
yes.
satellite images, iba yung spectral signature ng lupa sa spectral signature ng buildings. So may
Right.
mga ganun kasing,
Mhm.
may ganung klaseng understanding dito sa mga parameters na yan.
And what about,
So,
it
yeah, go ahead.
doesn't take into account rin yung health ng mga plants, right? Because I think
Mm.
it also
Yeah,
accounts for something, yeah.
yes. So yun yung hindi man limitation, but in a way, we're just looking at kumbaga the structure of an environment, but it doesn't take into account say animal health or plant health kung gaano ka healthy yung mga organisms na naninirahan in that area. So we're just looking at how certain structures of that environment are healthy or not in a way. So
Right.
ganun kumbaga yung dating niya. So yung apat na parameters na in red, green, blue, and orange color, ang gagawin ko dyan ay i-fuse ko yan together so that I come up with yung kanina sa title, a remote sensing ecological index. So instead of like 4 different parameters to look upon, you actually have just one single number later or score to qualify and quantify the ecological health and quality of the ecosystem. So, and then makikita mo siya sa mapa. So mamaya explain ko yun. So after all of those steps, yan yung math side niyan, which is,
Wow.
I'm not, di ba? Parang like when I got featured in Pinoy Scientist, there was this portion of that entire takeover week where I talked about my work, my research work, just like this. And I posted a portion of my presentation, which was this one. And then it got so many comments, like 500 plus likes. And then for that particular photo alone. And then like people were commenting, like, this is the reason why we do other subjects, or this is the reason why we don't do math. Kasi parang
Yeah. Yeah.
it was
Even
so
this photo?
overwhelming. Yeah, so this photo in itself, so it was really funny to hear the thoughts of people kasi parang akala nila yung inaaral ko lang ay halaman, hayop, yung mga
Right.
ilog, ganyan.
Oh,
Pero to
yeah.
be able to like see equations na ganito, parang nagulat sila na parang bakit may math yung bio and ecology. So sabi ko, it's a way, isang language talaga yun. And even though I'm not really good in math, even when I was in college, parang this was my Waterloo.
Yeah,
Um,
because so you came up with all these equations, right?
the equations here are actually kind of like fixed, established equations siya.
Right.
But the bottom formula at the end, the RSEI that you see at the bottom right,
Yes,
yung
yes.
may PCAF, NDVI, LSM, yan yung equation na binuo ko to fuse everything. Ayan. So, once ma-fuse mo yan, kasi software naman yung magko-compute for you, pero yan kasi yung theoretical na principle nung work, you'll come up with these maps. So,
Nice.
the RSEI, yung kaninang equation na nakita mo, can be translated to what we call ecological quality. So if you look at this map, you will see
Okay,
EQ.
so
Yeah,
yeah,
go
sorry.
ahead.
Hold up. So this map is
The
the
watershed.
image, yeah, representation of your equation, right?
Yes,
Okay.
correct. Yeah. So, kung makikita mo, may word dun sa ilalim. There's like EQ, 0.60, good. So, pag nabuo mo na yung remote sensing ecological index, you will come up with a map, usually after, pag na-visualize mo to sa software. Ang ecological quality or yung remote sensing ecological index will range from 0 to 1. 1 being the highest, 0 obviously being the lowest. So pag yung value ng isang portion ng mapa na yan ay 0.8 to 1, ibig sabihin excellent yung portion na yon ng watershed mo. Pero pag kunyari 0 to 0.2, ibig sabihin poor yung ecological quality ng area na inaaral mo.
Yes, and
So,
how far ba ang range ng watershed? Because there are areas that seem to be a bit medyo malayo na sa water system, or
mhm.
maybe I'm not reading it right.
Yeah,
not sure.
actually medyo nakukuha mo and that's a good
Yes.
observation. So, kung mapapansin mo dito sa mapa, let's look at April 2020. So if that's the entire watershed, including the river itself and the associated land, all of those in dark green and yellow or light green, ayan yung mga areas with moderate to excellent quality. Ibig sabihin, yung mga parameters na ginamit ko kanina nung unify or finuse ko siya together, all of those would account for good quality. Ibig sabihin, maayos yung estado ng environment mo sa area na yan. Pero if you look at the areas with like orange and red spots, especially the April 2020, yung mga areas na yan ay malapit na sa tubig. And usually in areas where water is present, ano bang meron pag meron tubig? Obviously, may human settlements and human communities ka. So, kung i-overlay mo yan sa another map that would show you where people are residing, makikita mo na associated yung mga tubig mismo sa mga tao, sa communities and settlements ng mga tao, which means that us humans, communities, can impact and will always impact and affect our river ecosystems, particularly yung pinakamalapit sa tubig. Kasi syempre kumukuha tayo ng tubig, minsan nagde-dredge tayo ng river para makukuha ng buhangin, pang construction. So ginagamit natin siya for tourism, etc. So all of those factors account for the ecological quality of the watershed.
Yeah.
So,
And this is only for Abra, no? How I wish
for
na
Abra.
for the whole Philippines sana to na study just to
Yeah.
give some awareness for Filipinos ba?
Yeah. Actually, yun yung next steps talaga ng research na to and to try to adopt the index or the equation to ano to other river systems, especially the biggest river systems that we have in the Philippines. Like in Luzon, it's not even Abra River, but it's Cagayan River. So yun yung isa sa mga pinakamalalaking river systems natin kunyari sa Luzon. So hindi pa siya na-apply. And wait, let me just try to show you. I'm going to show you something.
Yes, yes.
Sa wala dito sa slide deck na to. But anyway,
Yeah, it's fine.
parang may mga ito yung unang study in the Philippines that use the remote sensing ecological index
Nice.
in river ecosystems. So that work, yung research work ko na yon ay na publish na sa Philippine in this journal. If you can see my screen, the official journal of the Philippine American Academy of Science and Engineering. So it was published here. So if you look at if you search the title on Google, you will see the full paper. So like I can open it right now. So you'll actually see the entire study, how I did the study, the equations and the results and all. So yeah, it's an official study already. It's published in a scientific journal. So definitely other scientists, other practitioners can use it. And siguro ang isang practical na application ng study ko na to is sa DENR, meron silang monitoring division for ecosystems. Inaaral nila yan. And coming up with a way to use satellite images is a quick and very accurate way to actually assess the health of an ecosystem kahit hindi ka pa nakakapunta doon. And ang tendency kasi natin, kunyari may 1 million ako. So ang gagawin ko, kapag may ecosystem ako, say Abra Watershed, ang gagawin ko, bibigay ko yung pera doon, gagamitin niyo for conservation, protection, management efforts. Pero kung alam mo sa isang malaking landscape or waterscape, yung areas na vulnerable or medyo poor na yung quality, doon mo ifa-funnel through yung pera or funding mo to protect. Kasi parang hindi rin ganun ka intuitive kung lahat ng pera mo ifa-funnel mo sa area na excellent na yung quality ng environment. Siyempre, pwede mong lagyan ng pera para may conservation and protection efforts ka pa din. Pero you also want to have restoration and rehabilitation efforts in degraded and poor quality ecosystems or environments already. So hindi mo madadilute yung worth ng pera na linalaan mo to protect
Right.
these ecosystems. So it's a decision-making tool as well. It's not just something very sciencey, but it could be used by policymakers, by DNR, by NAMRIA, etc., to assess ecosystems in terms of their health and quality. So,
Yes, and
yun.
and how are these funds ba exactly translated into any programs or activities done by the government? Like what exactly are they doing to
There's a
save
lot.
the rivers?
Um, Whether it's in terms of research in general, just knowing about how our rivers are in terms of their quality, ano yung mga organisms na nandun, but also actually capacity building um in people residing near river ecosystems. There's always projects in terms of conservation and management. Paano ba pwede sustainably mamamanage yung resources that we get from rivers. There's always a regular monitoring of the health of these ecosystems. So talagang parte ng mandato ng um, DNR RBCO. It's the River Basin Control Office. And then meron ding EMB, yan, mga BMB. They work hand in hand to actually protect and conserve and manage our river ecosystem. So depende, parang in different aspects of conservation and protecting our
Right.
environment, meron silang proyekto for that.
And what's the greatest cause? Do you have any idea? Greatest cause degradation sa rivers, is it human settlement or maybe more on resource extraction or whatever?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. I think it's balance na ngayon yung there's this because we're converting a lot of associated land in those rivers to say settlements. So apart from, kasi yung sabi mo nga na resource extraction, isang impact na yun, malaki na yun, significant yun. But more of how we're actually cutting and breaking the flow of rivers, yun din yung isa sa mga reasons kung bakit nawawala or nabubura sa mapa yung mga rivers natin, especially even the small river systems in the Philippines. Paunti-unting nauubos yung mga yan. And there's this recent study about like the river ecosystems of the Philippines na PhD, doktor na siya actually ngayon, kaibigan ko siya, si Doc Pam. Si Pam ay nag-aral sa UK din. Tapos ang inaral niya ay using satellite images din as well. Minapa niya lahat ng river ecosystem sa buong Pilipinas. So doon niya nakikita na certain river ecosystems would have distinct shapes, but one of the main impacts na kung bakit nawawala yung iba nating rivers, nasisira sila, nagde-degrade sila is really because of how we convert those portions of the river watershed into other forms, say agricultural, or yun nga yung pinapatuyo natin kasi kumukuha tayo ng buhangin. Lahat ng yun nakakaapekto sa kalagayan ng rivers natin.
And then I want to get back lang on your equation. Could you explain a bit more? Because I'm trying to make sense of how these equations actually account for the quality. Like anong mga parameters mo, and like what factors are more important in the equation that
That's a good
determine the
question.
quality?
Yeah. Wait, I'll just try to load the, because even my professors asked me that question. Tapos sabi nila, can you explain more about the equations that you use? So here. So yung NDVI, again, I mentioned earlier, that's vegetation. NDBSI, the one that you see on your top right, is how bare the environment or the soil is or the surface of the earth is. And it uses two different equations pa sa ilalim. Parang magsasubstitute ka dyan ng mga values using the satellite images. Kasi pag dinownload mo yung satellite images, may nasa folder yan. Tapos pag tingin mo ng folder, parang may document sa loob doon. When you click, there's gonna be a lot of values inside. So like
Right.
angle of the sun, angle of the tilt of the earth, like anong incidence kayo. Ang daming actually data na makikita doon. But these are numbers. Yun yung hindi ko na masyadong may explain because I don't know the science and engineering of that one. But there are certain numbers that you can use for these equations. And then, kung makikita mo here, dito yung LSM, and then yung T here, yung sa bottom left, is land surface temperature. So essentially, yung LSM and NDVI, both moisture and vegetation, they have a positive effect to ecological quality. So the higher the NDVI and land surface moisture, mas mataas yung contributions niyan to ecological quality. So the more na mas mataas yan, the more na mas marireach na yung value na 1 or close to 1 pag mataas yung values na yan. Yung NDBSI naman and yung land surface temperature, the more na tumataas yan, the more na mas negative yung effect niya doon sa ecological quality. Kasi syempre tumataas yung what do you call this? Tumataas dito yung temperature mo. Tapos sa NDBSI naman, kasi nga ang minimeasure niyan kung gaano ka-bare yung area ng environment mo. Ang assumption dyan, habang tumataas yung value niyan, mas bare yung surface, mas kumbaga nakalbo yung area mo dahil wala kang vegetation to actually support the environment. Kaya naapektuhan yung ecological health. So may negative naman na effect or impact yung values na yan to the equation. So using all of those four indices, itong 4 na parameters na yan, sila ngayon yung bumubuo ng remote sensing ecological index. I cannot explain the nitty-gritty of the equations in itself kasi may mga for correction, may mga ganun-ganun din kasi siya. But some equations here sa software ko na siya ginawa, but I had to like at least understand the basic principles of these equations, paano siya nag-work. Yeah.
Right. And do you think there are other factors na other data that are hard to come by that you think are essential in this equation and in your research? Because maybe this is important for like whoever's watching, maybe they can also stitch up the studies together.
Yeah. Very good question. Actually, yun din yung isang recommendation ko that if you look at the RSEI equation, yung PCA stands for a principal component analysis. It's a statistical tool that we use to remove redundancies from our data so that mas robust yung results ng data mo or ng equation na binibigay sa'yo later. So anyway, quick question is yes, you can actually improve on that equation by putting in other indices or other parameters. Pero currently, there have been studies that used 6 or I think 8 other parameters. Parang nadagdagan pa ng 4 yan. Pero ang hirap kasi with using more variables is that you introduce more noise to the data set. So the more that there's noise, the more that you have more variables, sometimes it's more difficult to actually identify whether this is the index that would cause like a positive impact towards the ecological health or not. So may ganun siyang way. There's a way to actually remove that noise, pero hindi pa siya ganun ka-optimized. Kaya parang hindi rin nila recommend na you put in a lot of variables, especially like in the real world scenario. Pag bumaba ka naman sa isang bumaba ka on ground, hindi mo rin naman yan lahat ma-observe or ma-measure. Kaya din, even if we're using only 4, say, components, these four, you can directly measure these on ground eh. Pag pumunta ka, pwede kang mag-measure ng temperature, pwede mong i-check yung vegetation cover, pwede mong i-check yung moisture, pwede mong itignan kung gaano ka-bare yung ano, and you can quantify those on ground. Kaya yung babalik lang ako dun sa sinabi ko earlier that it's always like balancing it and coupling it
Right.
with groundwork kasi hindi pwedeng satellite images lang kasi kailangan mo i-verify yung nangyayari on ground. So
Right.
yeah.
And do you also have data on the timeline sa health ng rivers? Because I was thinking like initially na yes, perhaps the climate has an effect on it, but
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious lang, is there like a progression on the health of the rivers throughout the span of a certain time?
That's a good question. Actually, yung first na attempt ko for this study was supposed to be a 5-year study of the river shed. At least yung nung time na yun, it was 2021 backwards. Actually, parang 2020, kinonsider ko na yung 2022 kaso hindi pa tapos. Kumbaga, yung dataset, yung specific month ng satellite image na kailangan ko, wala pa. Hindi pa siya, walang dataset for the Philippines for that particular month. I'm doing seasons din kasi before. So, it was difficult. Kaya we had to drop that objective. Sabi ng professor ko, like, you can do that for your PhD. Actually, it's not just 5 years, but you can do like 50-year study or like a
Yes,
100-year
exactly.
study of the ecosystem and how it actually transformed from this siguro until such time to present. So, pwede naman actually magganon yung spatiotemporal study. So, especially for temporal studies and in the Philippines that we do have like 2 seasons, wet and dry. So, magandang i-account anong nangyayari. Pwede mo nga rin tignan at i-compare pre-pandemic, post-pandemic, or during the pandemic, what happened with our rivers given that there's no like significant activity that was happening during the lockdowns, during the pandemic. So pwede naman gawin yun. It's just that we really had to like establish muna whether the equation or whether this framework would actually be helpful and significant in assessing the ecological health. And you know, we got good results naman. So I'm personally planning to like continue this study and look at historical. Kung hindi historical, we can, you know, start monitoring our river ecosystems using this technology or this equation. So yeah.
Right, because it gives you, I don't know, a much more detailed
Mm-hmm.
idea of what's causing this, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Mm-hmm. And maybe I have a question, pero perhaps this is outside your
Mm,
study and your research, more of an opinion lang.
yeah, go ahead.
Because they ordinarily we can assume that it's really bad to destroy your rivers or degrade its health. But what do you think about, kasi there's also a human need, like you said earlier, na
Mm-hmm.
we have to look into agriculture, we have to look, I'm not sure about human settlement, if that's
Mm-hmm.
really a valid reason.
Yeah.
Pero in your opinion, how do you like give importance or rationalize this to dichotomy between
Mm-hmm.
the
Yeah.
environment and human need?
Yeah. So well, apart from doing this very technical side of my expertise as as an early career scientist, like I also do ecosystem services. So when we say ecosystem services, these are benefits that you get from the environment. And there are four distinct types. So cultural, provisioning, supporting, and regulating. So those four main types. So an example of cultural ecosystem service could be like recreation, aesthetic value, and then provisioning water, food that we get from rivers, ganyan. And then supporting and regulating almost the same thing, pero different than like in terms of flood control, in terms of water cycling, in terms of nutrient cycling. So yung mga scientific, mga processes that happen in the environment. So I'm saying this because I think yes, definitely human settlements, us, we are very much dependent on our ecosystems, our environment in general. And provisioning pa lang tubig, pagkain, parang kailangan natin kumuha from the environment. All of the things that we're enjoying right now are probably 90% extracted from the environment. Damit, cellphone, tubig na iniinom natin, lahat yata ng bagay na meron tayo ngayon are products um, na nanggaling sa environment natin. But I think it's also unfair to say na we shouldn't be extracting or we shouldn't be getting something from the environment, because these are inherent tangible or intangible benefits that we get from the environment. And I think dun papasok yung aspect natin of understanding how can we sustainably manage our ecosystems and our environment without, damaging the source, na deplete natin siya to a point where the next generation could not benefit from it as well. So I think dun papasok yung how do we sustainably manage all of these resources. And yes, well, ang reality naman is kahit environmentalist ako, gumagamit pa rin naman ako ng tubig, 'di ba? Parang gumagamit din ako ng kuryente, kumakain din naman ako and all that. And galing lahat yun sa environment. But I think it's all about, managing our resources wisely and sustainably. And it's in the environment field in ESG, it's such a buzzword right now, yung word na sustainability. So malaking buzzword ngayon yung sustainability, but it's a reality that we really want to imbibe, kasi mauubos at mauubos yung mga natural resources natin if we do not do that. And I think our the next generation, the young people, wala silang mamanahin kung mauubos na natin sila at this point. So, yeah.
Right. Exactly. But do you have any general like suggestions or ideas how we can go about sustainably extracting resources from our rivers environment?
Well, in general, there are a lot of methods, but one on top of my head, I think one of the few things could be, hindi siya essentially parang way to like sustainably source our materials from it, pero kasi sa environment, meron din kami tinatawag na field called environmental valuation. So when I finished when I took my master's in the UK, I had a course called environmental economics. So sabi ko parang, Diyos ko, pati pala dito, multifaceted din yung gagawin ko, kasi I wasn't like just a biologist or ecologist, but also like I'm looking at the perspective of economy, economics, like paano mo ma-ensure na sustainable nga yung management ng resources natin, na hindi madami na extract natin. When you do environmental valuation, to laymanize it and to, for the viewers to understand it in a simple sense, you sort of like put a price tag on an ecosystem. So, and when you put a price tag on something, diba, you perceive its value. So say, if you put like a price tag on a certain type of bag, sabihin natin, makikita mo kung 100,000 pounds yan, sabihin natin, or 150 million pesos, sabihin mo, you would say na, of high value yung bag na yan, so we're going to protect it kasi mahal siya, diba? But eventually, certain things, pero syempre sa economics, meron mo tayong understanding that certain things nagde-depreciate yung value na yan. Isa naman sa nag-appreciate yung value ay lupa, land in particular. And another relevant thing to that is our ecosystem, our environment in general. Hindi yan basta-basta na depreciate unless it gets degraded. So what we are doing, certain environmental economists would do, they will put a price tag, they will evaluate, they put value to not just the structure of the environment, but also say the organisms, the water that you get from it, the food that you get from it. And then they put a time scale aspect to it. So say in 1 year, etong forest patch na to could give you a return when you harvest all of the fruit. Sabihin natin fruit forest yon. After mong ma-harvest yon in 1 year, kung papangalagaan mo tong forest patch na to, this would give you a certain yield of fruits that you can sell for this particular amount. Pero if you say, kalbuhin mo ngayon yun, tapos ibenta mo yung lupa, ito lang i-return mo for this entire year. Kasi wala na yung lupa. Kasi wala na eh. Degraded na yung ecosystem mo. So people are actually trying their best to do those kinds of studies. That's just one practical thing that we do. Pero parang people appreciate more if alam nilang meron kang sustained na nakukuha from the environment. And kaya nauso ngayon yung green financing, yung mga ganun kasi may premium na ngayon yung pangangalaga natin sa kalikasan kasi yun, pag naubos nga natin, I mean, again, wala tayong pagkukuhanan ng mga gamit natin and all that. So that's just one particular step actually. I mean, minsan kasi it's also difficult to be a purist. If you can what I mean, like say ako, like I'm 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 a scientist for the environment, but it's like sabihin ko sa'yo na wag kang gumamit ng kaya anything. Like, you have to live sustainably, but sometimes we don't have the choice. Diba? Parang say, wag kang bumili ng in sachets or in plastics. But that's unfair because we're not given the option to actually buy in more sustainable packaging, di ba? And at the same time, mahal din, di ba? Parang pag bibili ka ng sachet, mura yun eh. Pero like, kung bibili ka in bulk or in bottles, kanya, mahal yun eh. For a common Filipino, siguro mas bibilihin nila yung sachet kasi yun yung afford nila, di ba? And we cannot blame our fellow Filipinos na hindi kayang mag-shift ng lifestyle just so we can protect our planet. So again, bubuntunin ko na din na parang it will also like go to the discussion of how we should hold accountable yung mga companies and institutions that actually destroy the environment and not us individual citizens kasi maliit lang yung impact natin kung tutuusin. Significant yan
Right.
obviously pag pinagsama-sama pero kung itasama mo yung time scale, may mga companies, businesses na talagang yung multi-million companies na sila yung mas sumisira ng environment natin kaysa
Yes,
sa
yes.
ating individuals. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean it's I think ang important now is really raising awareness.
Mm-hmm.
And it's one thing that I really wanted to talk to you Rin because I really want to put awareness and attention sa science in general and especially
Mm-hmm.
this topic kasi importante, di ba? And we all know na hindi masyado to ina-appreciate sa
Yeah.
mainstream, right? So, hindi nila alam how impactful these studies are, di ba? What you
Mm-hmm.
guys are doing.
Yeah.
So, you mentioned among the studies that you are doing next is studying it for a certain like a temporal aspect of it,
Mm-hmm.
but what other how do you plan your study to evolve further pa, like what are your plans for your studies?
Mm, actually more of kung dun sa study na yon, it's more of actually knowing din nga. Nabanggit mo na rin naman kanina, but also organismal response, individual responses. Kasi it's not just like, hindi lang siya yung outline. Kumbaga sa bahay, di ba, since architect, hindi lang siya yung pader, hindi lang siya yung bubong, hindi lang yung structure ng environment yung gusto kong aralin, but actually to couple that with what are the responses of living organisms inside the ecosystem. Kasi sila naman, isa din kasi tayo doon, like humans are organisms. So, at paano tayo nagre-respond to those changes in the environment? Yung animals, plants, how do they respond to those changes in their environment? Yun yung magandang i-couple. Kasi apart from me being an ecologist, I'm also a biologist. So I'm interested in also looking at like the individual responses of living organisms, living creatures. So pwede kasing sabihin natin na healthy, pero organisms are innately smart. We can adapt to our environment, but may tipping point yan. Kumbaga may limit or threshold ka lang on which to a certain extent, if our environment is fully degraded, hindi na siya livable. Diba? Pag yung bahay, parang pag natumba na yan at medyo mahirap na siya minsan, ayusin kasi nga, pati yung pundasyon kung nasira, wala na, parang you have to rebuild it again. So, parang may ganung konsepto na apart from it being a temporal analysis or historical analysis of it, you also include like what is really happening on ground. Parang you couple it with that to make it more comprehensive and more holistic in a sense.
Yeah, yeah, very informative this conversation that we're having. So right now you're taking a PhD, masters, right? In
I'm done with my master's. I will
right,
do
PhD pala.
my PhD this
Right.
September.
Oh, nice. September,
Yeah.
and that would last 7 months, you said?
No, it will last for 3 years, three to
Wow,
four.
3 years.
Yeah. So thing with academics is that we do like focus on one specific topic and we do it for
Mm,
probably for the rest of our lives. But again, it's still about like rivers, water quality, all that.
nice.
So
Uh-huh.
still relevant to my current passion and field. So yeah.
Nice. And you got in through scholarship, so you're
Yeah, I applied to this program under it's a project. So under that project, there are actually 10 sub-projects all focusing on rivers. Tapos parang, since 10 projects yun, parang may naghahanap per project kailangan ng isang PhD student. So I'm part of that 10
right, right.
across the world ganyan na napili to be part of those projects. Tapos it's under the Marie Sklodowska-Curie Doctoral Network Program. So may part siya ng, if I'm not mistaken, the European Science Agency ESA. But yun, Europe naman. So I'll be based in University College Dublin um, to do that research project and that PhD at the same time. Pero it's gonna be focusing more on like at least yung site ko will be reversed in Europe.
Europe,
So
okay.
kaya parang sabi ko, oh, this is new to me kasi I'm used to doing like tropical river ecosystems. So,
Mhm.
but probably like the techniques and the methods could be applicable naman siguro. I mean,
Right.
hopefully after that PhD, I can go back and, do
Yeah.
my research here in the Philippines.
Yeah, as I was gonna ask you that if you plan to practice here pagkatapos mo sa PhD, which is a
Well,
good thing, you know.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I hope so. I hope I can return. Kasi sayang naman kung mabiktima pa rin tayo ng brain drain. Kasi ang dami rin nating mahuhusay na scientists who are, going
Yeah,
abroad to do their studies kasi minsan hindi na sila nakakabalik. Kasi sometimes,
really.
there are a lot of reasons, pero one of the few would be like because we're not really supported well in the country to do science. Kasi may iba-ibang priorities ang gobyerno. Pero I hope we can adopt yung ginagawa ng ibang bansa kaya sila umuunlad palalo kasi they put a premium to science, they put a premium to science communication like this, they put a premium to our environment kaya parang ang unlad ng bansa nila. So I hope we can do that in the near future.
Right, right, exactly. Maybe last question na lang, but are there many scientists or people who are studying about rivers right now sa Philippines?
Good question. So when I was interviewed for my PhD, um, there's not it's not as established as like the marine science community. So meron pero hindi siya ganun ka-significant, hindi ganun kadami. There's parang an association of freshwater scientists but um konti lang talaga siya in the Philippines. A lot of like, people would be doing research work pero medyo hindi man sa kalat pero parang iba-iba rin kasi yung thrust ng bawat region, ng bawat probinsya. Meron namang community pero hindi siya ganoon nga kilala, hindi gaya ng marine science community kasi nga syempre nasa Pilipinas tayo. So, ang dami nating dagat, ang dami nating beaches, ganyan. So, establish yung marine science community pero at least for freshwater science, for limnology, medyo content. Even in my region, like there are a lot of there's a dearth, parang sobrang konti ng river scientists, mga freshwater scientists natin na based in the Cordillera. Ang ironic, the Cordillera Administrative Region is the watershed cradle of the North. So it's so weird because we have a lot of rivers here. As in, madami talaga, like province of Benguet alone. Pero wala masyadong nag-aaral. So, when I was interviewed, sabi sa akin nung nag-i-interview sa akin na supervisor ko na ngayon, sabi niya, why do you want to be like a freshwater scientist or like a river scientist? So sabi ko, simply because Like I was born and I was raised in a province where there's a lot of rivers. And I think as a Filipino, like you really have a greater responsibility to protect your ecosystems and to protect your home. Kasi malapit ako personally, kaya din nung when you invited me for this podcast, I was really excited to share it because apart from it being my line of work right now as an early career scientist, it's also something very personal because our house in Abra is really near a river. And sometimes my mom and my siblings would get food from the river. Huli silang isda, huli sila ng mga pwede nilang kainan from the river. And I think, again, it's a full circle moment for me to be able to study these ecosystems and to actually do it for a living and do it for science and for actually protecting them because I benefited from our environment, from the rivers. So it's such a fulfillment for me to be able to study them and at least hopefully I get to come back here in the Philippines and do more river work kasi kailangan natin ng mga mag-aaral sa ating
Right. Yeah.
environment. So
And
yeah.
I hope many people would follow suit because I think there's still a lot more to learn about our rivers, right? Or
Yeah,
any
yeah, I
part of
agree.
our. Yeah. All right, Dane. It was so nice knowing you and having to talk to you. I
Yeah.
really learned a lot, and I hope a lot of people would also learn a lot from this conversation.
Yeah, I mean, it's nice to talk about your work, but also frightening kasi a lot of people would like think na parang, ano ba yung ginagawa? Pero yeah, I mean, as a multidimensional being, parang isa lang naman tong aspect, but I think yung I'm very proud to share na yung science work ko has direct impact to us Filipinos and to our environment kasi proud tayo dan bilang Pilipino na maganda yung bansa natin and it's rich of natural resources.
So if this conversation has sparked new interest and questions for you, consider subscribing to this channel, and I'll bring you more insights from science, philosophy, arts, and more.